under the burning Arizona sun. The land stretched wide and wild, painted in gold and red. Dust devils danced along the horizon. And somewhere between the mesas and the dry riverbeds rode a lone cowboy named Eli Mercer. His horse, a lean sorrel named Flint, carried him steady and sure through the heat. Eli wasn't much for words or crowds, just a man making his way west, looking for a quiet place to call his own. But fate has a way of finding men like him they least expect it. He first saw the smoke rising over the ridge as the sun began to fall, a thin, gray column twisting up into the copper sky. It wasn't a campfire. It was too thick, too wild. Eli spurred Flint forward, heart tightening as the smell of burning canvas and cedar reached him. The small Apache camp below was in ruin-torn tents, trampled earth, the echo of gunfire fading into the distance. He dismounted, revolver in hand, scanning the wreckage. The wind carried the faintest sound, a whimper. Eli followed it to a fallen wagon, half burned. Beneath it, pinned under the charred remains, was a young girl. Her dark hair was tangled with ash, and her leg was caught beneath a broken beam. Her small chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Eli dropped his gun and went to work. He heaved the timber off her with a grunt, then lifted her into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, filled with fear and pain. He whispered a few soft words, trying to calm her as he carried her to his horse. She couldn't understand him, but something in his voice must have told her she was safe. He tore a strip from his shirt to wrap her leg and gave her a few drops of water from his canteen. The camp was silent now, except for the whisper of fire dying in the wind. Whoever had done this was long gone. Eli rode through the night. The girl shivered against his chest, murmuring words he couldn't understand. He rode until the first light touched the cliffs, where a stream cut through the canyon. There he made camp, cleaned her wounds, and tried to coax her to eat a bit of dried meat. She was strong, stronger than a child her age had any right to be. He could see it in her eyes, the kind of strength born from the desert itself. By midday, she could sit up. She said her name softly, like a secret Ayana. Eli nodded, repeating it until she smiled faintly. He spent the next few days tending to her, building a small shelter from branches and canvas, and keeping watch for riders. Each night, as the stars blanketed the sky, she'd hum a soft tune, something old and sad. On the fourth day, they saw riders in the distance. Eli's hand went to his gun until he recognized the painted faces and feathered hair. Apache. He stood as they approached. 6 men on horseback, silent as ghosts. One dismounted and stepped forward, an older woman, eyes sharp and steady. Her presence commanded silence. Ayana's eyes lit up, and she limped toward her, crying out. The woman caught her in her arms, holding her tight. Eli understood then. The woman was her mother. When she looked at him, her gaze held the weight of storms. She said something in Apache, then gestured toward her daughter, then to him. Eli didn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning. Gratitude, caution, respect. The men built a fire, and one of them offered Eli food. He sat among them, unsure, until Ayana sat beside him and placed her small hand over his. Her mother watched, expression unreadable. Later that night, as the flames flickered low, the woman came to him. One of the men translated roughly into English. She was called Nai. She was the leader of their band, what was left of it after the raid. She told Eli that white men had attacked them men looking to drive them from the canyon lands. She thanked him for saving her child, but her words carried something else, something deeper. The translator hesitated, then said that Nahi believed no meeting was without reason, that perhaps Eli had been sent by the spirits to repay a debt. Eli shook his head, saying he'd only done what any man should. Nahi smiled faintly, as if she'd heard that before. Then she said something that made the translator's face pale. She offered him a place among them, a home if he wished it, a bond of protection and family. It wasn't a casual offer. To live among the Apache meant giving up his old life, his people, his name, his world. Eli stared into the fire, torn between the freedom he'd always sought and the walls he built around his heart. That night, he couldn't sleep. The desert wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the scent of sage and smoke. He thought of Ayanna, her quiet laughter as she tried to braid her hair again. He thought of Nahi's eyes sharp, knowing, filled with a strange kind of peace. He had no home waiting for him, no family. Only the trail did dawn. He found Nahi by the stream, washing her daughter's face. He told her, through the translator, that he'd ride north, that his road wasn't meant to end here. She said nothing for a while, then spoke softly. The translator's voice trembled as he relayed her words. Sometimes the road doesn't lead where you expect. Sometimes it brings you where you need it. Eli saddled Flint and turned toward the hills. Ayanna ran after him, holding something in her small hands, a necklace made of bone and turquoise. She pressed it into his palm, tears in her eyes. He tied it around his neck before riding off. He told himself he'd never forget that look, the look of someone who believed he'd come back. Weeks passed. Eli drifted from one town to another, taking small jobs, breaking horses, guarding stagecoaches, keeping to himself. But the necklace never left his chest. Some nights, he'd dream of the canyon, of the firelight on Nahi's face, and the sound of Ayanna's song. Then, one evening, in a dusty town near the border, he overheard talk at the saloon. A troop of soldiers had gone into Apache territory, hunting the last of a tribe that had refused to move to the reservation. Eli felt a chill run through him. He asked, "Where?" When the man pointed toward the very canyon he'd left weeks ago, Eli didn't finish his drink. He was on his horse before the sun dipped below the hills. He rode hard through the night, faster than he'd ever ridden before. The sky bled with dawn when he reached the canyon. Smoke rose again, the kind he'd seen once before. He dismounted and crept through the rocks. The soldiers were gone, but the ground was littered with what they left behind. Fadiz, silence. He called out softly, heart pounding. Then he heard a faint sound near the riverbank. Ayanna. She was alive, barely. Her leg was wounded again, her small hands clutching something. He lifted her, voice breaking, asking where her mother was. She looked toward the cliffs. Nahi lay there, motionless, her body still, but her eyes open, watching the sunrise. Eli knelt beside her. She was dying. She smiled weakly when she saw him, then reached for his hand. With trembling fingers, she pressed something into his palm, a feather, painted red. The translator wasn't there, but Eli didn't need words this time. He understood. She was giving him her daughter, trusting him with her life. When she took her last breath, the wind shifted, whispering through the canyon like a prayer. Eli held her hand until the warmth faded, then gathered Ayanna into his arms. He buried Nahi beneath the red earth, marking her grave with stones and the painted feather she'd given him. Days later, Eli rode out of the canyon again. This time, he didn't ride alone. Ayanna sat in front of him, wrapped in his coat, her head resting against his chest. The road stretched endless before them, but for the first time in his life, Eli felt like he knew where he was going. He never spoke much about that day, or about the woman who'd changed his life with a choice of faith and love. But those who saw him in the years to come, the quiet cowboy with the Apache girl by his side and the turquoise necklace around his neck, knew there was a story behind those eyes. A story of a man who saved a girl and found something he didn't know he was missing. A story of how a mother's final choice gave a lonely cowboy a family and a reason to ride on.